The Lakota woman whispered, "You saved me. Now leave me." The gunslinger's next move shocked the town. The white man's hands were already tearing at her dress when the gunshot exploded through the warehouse. Sarah, no, that wasn't her name, that was never her name, felt the rough fingers release her arms. She collapsed onto the dirt floor, gasping her torn clothing, barely covering her body. 4 men stumbled backward, their drunken laughter dying in their throats. In the doorway stood a figure she couldn't quite make out, a man ragged and filthy, his beard matted with what might have been vomit or whiskey or both. But the revolver in his hand was steady, perfectly terrifyingly steady. "Step away from her." His voice was hoarse, broken like an instrument that hadn't been played in years. "Now." The leader of the hunters, a thick-necked man with tobacco-stained teeth, squinted at the newcomer. "Who the hell are you, old drunk? This ain't your business." "Just a little fun with a prairie nigger we found on the road." The ragged man stepped forward. The afternoon light caught his face, and Sarah saw his eyes blue as winter sky and completely empty of fear. "I'm the man who's going to put a bullet through your skull if you don't disappear in 10 seconds. There's 4 of us, and 1 of you. 9 seconds. Something in those eyes made the hunters pause. This wasn't a man who was bluffing. This was a man who had nothing left to lose. 8 seconds. The leader spat on the ground. "Fine. Keep your Indian whore." He jerked his head at his companions. "Let's go. Crazy bastard ain't worth the trouble." They shuffled out, muttering curses. The ragged man watched them go, his revolver never wavering until the sound of their horses faded into the distance. Then he turned to look at her. Sarah No Thashina Wing, her true name, the name her grandfather gave her, lay on the dirt floor, clothes-torn, body shaking. But her eyes, when they met his, held no tears, no gratitude, no fear, only a question. "You saved me," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "Why?" The man holstered his revolver with trembling hands, trembling now, she noticed, though they'd been rock-solid moments before. He smelled of whiskey and despair. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe because I'm not drunk enough yet to watch a woman be destroyed and do nothing." She studied him, the torn clothes, the matted hair, the haunted eyes of a man who had given up on living but hadn't quite managed to die. "Who were you?" she asked. Not, "Who are you?" Who were you? As if she could see the ghost of someone else beneath the wreckage. The man stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Someone who tried to change the world and lost everything instead." He turned toward the door. "There's a creek a mile east. Clean yourself up, then keep walking. Get as far from here as you can. And you, I'll go back to my bottle. It's all I'm good for now." He started to walk away. "Wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "You didn't answer my question." Tashina slowly pushed herself up from the floor, wincing at the bruises already forming on her arms. "Who were you?" Silence. "My name," he said finally, "was Jonathan Whitmore. I was a United States Senator. I tried to stop them from killing your people." A pause. "I failed." Then he walked out into the fading light, leaving her alone with the dust and the silence and a name she would not forget. 13 years earlier, a different girl had stood on a different hill holding her grandmother's hand. Tashina Wing was 8 years old. The sun was setting over the Kansas plains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It should have been beautiful, but the smell made it impossible to see beauty. The stench of rotting flesh hung over the prairie like a curse, thick, choking, inescapable. It crawled into her nose, her mouth, her lungs. It would live in her memory forever. Below the hill, stretching to the horizon in every direction, lay the bodies. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. Buffalo carcasses stripped of their hides, left to rot in the summer sun. The meat enough to feed her people for years had been abandoned. The white hunters only wanted the skins. $3 each. That was the price of her people's extinction. $3 per hide. 60 million buffalo reduced to rotting mountains of flesh. Her grandmother, Winyen Waste, good woman, fell to her knees among the carnage. Her weathered hands that had tanned countless hides and prepared countless meals, reached out to touch a buffalo skull half buried in the bloody mud. "Ina," little Tashina whispered. "Why did they do this?" Her grandmother didn't answer immediately. She was crying silently, the tears carving paths through the dust on her lined face. "They don't kill the buffalo to eat," she finally said, her voice cracking. They kill the buffalo, so we starve. Tashina looked out at the endless field of death. Flies buzzed in thick black clouds. Vultures circled overhead, too fat and gorged to fly properly. Will we die, grandmother? Winyan Waste turned to look at her granddaughter, this strange, brilliant child who had been born under a full moon with her eyes already open as if she couldn't wait to see the world. The medicine man had said she was special, that she would carry the memories of her people into the future. Not all of us, the old woman said. Some will survive. And you, she gripped Tashina's shoulders with sudden fierceness. You must be one of them. Do you understand me? You must live. The little girl nodded solemnly. She didn't fully understand. Not yet. But she would remember. She would remember everything. The smell, the sight, the sound of her grandmother's broken voice. She would carry it all inside her, a wound that would never fully heal. 4 years later, the world had ended. Tashina, now 12, sat in the corner of their rotting teepee in the Pine Ridge Reservation watching her grandfather die. Wichita Wakang Holy Man had been the most respected healer of the Hunkpapa Lakota. Chiefs had traveled for days to seek his counsel. Warriors had trusted him with their lives. He had known the old ways, the sacred songs, the medicines that grew in hidden places. Now he lay on a thin blanket on the frozen ground, his body reduced to skin stretched over bone, his breath rattling like dry leaves. "Grandfather," Tashina whispered, "please eat something. I brought the rations." She held up the week's government issue, a chunk of beef that smelled wrong flour, spotted with mold lard that had gone rancid and brown sugar hardite with age. This was what the Great White Father in Washington sent to feed them. This was their reward for surrendering. Her grandfather turned his face away. "I will not eat their poison," he whispered. "Your grandmother ate it. She died vomiting blood. That meat is death wrapped in paper. But you'll starve. Then I will die with dignity." His hand, trembling, reached out to touch her face. "But you, Tashina, you are young. You are strong. You must eat. You must live. I can't watch you die. You can, you will, because that is what survivors do." His eyes, still sharp despite his weakness, locked onto hers. "Listen to me. You are the keeper now. Everything I know, everything our people know, it lives in you. If you die, it all dies. 1,000 generations of wisdom gone like smoke." Tears streamed down Tashina's face, but she didn't look away. "I will teach you one more thing," her grandfather continued. "The most important thing. The white men think they can kill us by killing the buffalo. They think they can erase us by starving us, by taking our children, by forbidding our language. But they are wrong." He pulled her closer, his grip surprisingly strong. "We are not our land. We are not our buffalo. We are not even our language. We are our memory. As long as one of us remembers, truly remembers, we can never be destroyed. Do you understand?" "Yes, grandfather." "Then remember this moment. Remember the smell of this rotting tippy. Remember the taste of hunger. Remember watching me die. Remember it all, and one day, when you are old and gray, tell your grandchildren. Tell them what was done to us. Tell them how we survived. Tell them they carry the blood of survivors in their veins." He closed his eyes. "Now go. Bring me water. And when I am gone, bury me yourself. Don't let the white soldiers touch my body." He died that night. Tashina, 12 years old, dug his grave with her bare hands. The ground was frozen solid. Her fingers cracked and bled. Her nails tore away from the flesh. But she kept digging through the night, through the pain, through the howling wind that cut like knives. No one came to help. Everyone was too weak from hunger. By dawn, she had carved a shallow hole in the frozen earth. She dragged her grandfather's body so light, so terribly light, and laid him in the grave. She covered him with dirt and stones. She sang the death song he had taught her, her voice hoarse and broken in the gray morning light. Then she stood over the grave, her hands ruined and bleeding, and made a vow. "I will live, grandfather. I will remember, and I will make them remember too." 2 weeks later, the soldiers came for the children. They rode into the reservation on tall horses, their blue uniforms crisp and clean against the squalor of the camp. They went from teepee to teepee, dragging out every child between 6 and 16. "Orders from Washington. All children must attend school. This is for their own good." Mothers wailed. Fathers tried to resist. But they were too weak from hunger, and the soldiers had guns. Tashina didn't cry when they took her. She didn't struggle. She walked with her back straight and her head high the way her grandfather had taught her. But inside, something hardened, something that would never soften again. The Carlisle Indian Industrial School. The sign above the gate read, "Kill the Indian, save the man." Tashina stood in line with the other children, 50 of them, maybe more, from a dozen different tribes. Lakota, Cheyenne, Apache, Navajo, their enemies once, but now they were all the same. All prisoners. All orphans of a dying world. The superintendent walked down the line, inspecting them like cattle at auction. His name was Captain Pratt, and his eyes held the cold certainty of a man who believed he was doing God's work. "From this moment forward," he announced, "you will forget your savage past. You will not speak your heathen languages. You will not practice your devil worship. You will become civilized." He stopped in front of Tashina. Her long black hair fell past her waist hair that her grandfather had brushed every morning, hair that held the strength of her ancestors. "What is your name, girl?" "Tashina Wing." She pronounced it clearly, defiantly. Pratt's lip curled in disgust. "That gibberish is no longer your name. From now on, you are Sarah. Say it." Silence. "Say it." Tashina looked him directly in the eyes, something Indian children were taught never to do to elders, but something she sensed these white people demanded. "I have a name," she said calmly. "My grandfather gave it to me. I don't need another." The slap came so fast she didn't see it. Her head snapped to the side, and she tasted blood where her teeth cut her cheek. "You will learn respect," Pratt said coldly. "Take her to be processed. Cut off that savage hair." 2 women grabbed her arms and dragged her toward the building. Inside, they stripped her naked. They burned her deerskin dress, the last thing she owned that her grandmother had made. They scrubbed her skin raw with harsh soap as if trying to wash away her color. And then they cut her hair. Tashina sat motionless as the scissors sheared through her locks. Black strands fell to the floor like dead leaves. She didn't cry. She didn't struggle. But inside her mind, she heard her grandfather's voice. "They can cut your hair. They can burn your clothes. They can beat you and starve you and lock you in darkness. But they cannot touch what is inside you. That is where we truly live." When they finished, they handed her a gray wool dress and a mirror. A stranger stared back at her. A girl with shorn hair and hollow eyes, wearing the uniform of the conquered. "Your name is Sarah," the matron said. "Your old name is forbidden. If you speak your devil language, you will be punished. If you practice your heathen ways, you will be punished. Do you understand?" "Yes," Tashina said. "I understand." But in her mind, she added, "I understand that you are afraid of us. You would not work so hard to destroy us if you were not afraid. And I will use that fear. One day, I will use it to destroy you." 6 years she spent in that school. 6 years of being called Sarah. 6 years of being forbidden to speak her language, to sing her songs, to be who she was. They beat her for speaking Lakota. They locked her in a dark cellar for 3 days when they caught her teaching younger children their native tongue. They starved her, humiliated her, tried to break her in every way imaginable. They failed because Tashina had discovered something they didn't understand, something they couldn't fight. She learned their language. She learned it so well that within 2 years she spoke better English than most white students at any Eastern school. She read their books, law, history, philosophy. She understood how their world worked, how their power operated. And she remembered everything. Every slap, every curse, every child who died of disease or despair, every girl who was violated by the priests and teachers who claimed to be saving them, every boy who was beaten until his spirit broke. She remembered it all, filed it away, waited. One day she promised herself, "One day I will speak, and the world will hear." At 18, she escaped. She walked out of Carlisle on a cold October night, with nothing but the gray dress on her back and a burning in her heart. She had no money, no food, no destination. She only knew she couldn't spend another day in that prison. For 2 weeks, she wandered through white settlements trying to find work, but no one would hire her. The moment they saw her face, those unmistakable features, the doors closed. "Get out of here, Indian. We don't serve your kind. Go back to your reservation where you belong." She ate scraps from garbage piles. She slept in barns and ditches. Her dress became rags. Her body grew weak, but she kept walking. On the 14th day, she collapsed on the road near a railroad depot. The sun blazed overhead, and she was too exhausted to crawl into the shade. She lay there staring at the blue sky, thinking, "Perhaps this is where I die. Perhaps I will see grandfather again." Then the shadows fell over her, and the voices came. "Well, look what we found, boys. A fresh one." She tried to rise. Hands pushed her down. Faces leered at her 4 white men hunters by their clothes, reeking of whiskey. "The buffalo are all gone," one of them laughed. "But there's still some game left on the prairie." They dragged her behind the warehouse. She fought, clawed, and bit and kicked, but hunger had stolen her strength. They held her down easily, laughing at her struggles. "Scream all you want, darling. Nobody's going to save you." Then the gunshot, and the ragged man in the doorway with his empty eyes and steady gun. Jonathan Whitmore had not intended to save anyone that day. He had intended to drink himself unconscious, as he had every day for the past decade. He had been walking to the trading post to buy more whiskey when he heard the sounds from the warehouse, the laughter, the struggle, the muffled screams. His first instinct was to keep walking. It wasn't his business. Nothing was his business anymore. He was a dead man who had forgotten to stop breathing. But some last ember of the man he used to be made him stop, made him turn, made him kick open that warehouse door with a gun he barely remembered how to use. And now, here he was standing in the fading light, watching a half-destroyed Indian girl study him like he was a puzzle she intended to solve. "Senator," she said, tasting the word. "You were a senator." Was. Past tense. He started walking toward his shack. "Go clean yourself up. Go somewhere, anywhere but here." "Where are you going?" "I told you." "Back to my bottle." "Wait." He stopped again. The girl, no, the young woman he realized looking at her properly for the first time, rose to her feet. She was tall, he noticed, almost as tall as him, and despite everything, the torn clothes, the bruises, the dirt, there was something striking about her. High cheekbones, fierce dark eyes, a grace that hadn't been beaten out of her. "I have nowhere to go," she said simply. "My people are scattered. My grandparents are dead. I escaped from the school that was supposed to civilize me." A bitter smile. "I am a woman alone in a world that wants me dead or docile, and you just saved my life. So, I'm going to follow you." Jonathan stared at her. "I didn't save you because I wanted company. I saved you because I don't know why I saved you. Now leave me alone." No. She limped toward him every step, obviously painful, but her eyes never leaving his face. "You were a senator. You tried to help my people. You lost everything because of it. I heard stories about you, the crazy white man who called us human, who said the buffalo slaughter was murder. The Indian lover they called you. The traitor to his race." Jonathan flinched at the old epithet. "You sacrificed your career, your family, your whole life trying to do what was right." She stopped in front of him. "And you failed. You're a broken man, drowning in whiskey, waiting to die. I understand that." "Then why follow me?" "Because you're the only white person I've ever met who might actually be worth saving." His shack was exactly what she expected, a rotting hovel filled with empty bottles reeking of mold and despair. But in one corner, she spotted something unexpected: books. Dozens of them, leather-bound and dusty. Law, philosophy, history. "You still read," she observed. "Sometimes, when I'm sober enough to see the words." She picked up a volume of Locke, ran her fingers over the spine. "At the school, they made us read. They thought books would civilize us. They didn't understand that books are weapons." She looked at him. "I learned their language so I could fight them with it." "What did you learn?" Jonathan slumped into a chair, reaching for a bottle. His hands were shaking again. "I learned that one man can't change a system. I learned that truth doesn't matter when money is at stake. I learned that my own wife thought Indian children weren't worth losing dinner party invitations over." He took a long drink. "She left me, took my son. He was 14. He wrote me a letter saying he never wanted to see me again because I had chosen savages over my own family." Another drink. "That was 10 years ago. I've been here ever since trying to drink myself to death. I'm not very good at it. I keep waking up." Tashina sat down across from him, uninvited. "What was in the reports you wrote, the ones they ignored?" Jonathan laughed bitterly. "Everything. 200 pages documenting what I saw at Pine Ridge. Children starving to death. Women raped by soldiers with no punishment. Meat so rotten it killed people who ate it. Government officials stealing half the rations and selling them." He stared at the bottle in his hand. "I thought if I could just show them the truth, they would have to act. I was naive. What happened? They buried the report, called me a lunatic. Newspapers printed cartoons showing me dressed as an Indian chief, calling me a race traitor. My colleagues laughed me out of the Senate, and nothing changed. They kept starving. They kept dying. The buffalo kept getting slaughtered. He hurled the bottle against the wall, watching it shatter. I gave up everything to do what was right, and it meant nothing. Silence. Then Tashina spoke, her voice soft but firm. I'm alive. Jonathan looked at her. You saved me today. One person. Does that mean nothing? One person doesn't change. My grandfather told me something before he died. She leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. He said, we are not our land, not our buffalo, not even our language. We are our memory. As long as one of us remembers, we survive. She reached out and took the bottle from his hand, the new one he had been reaching for. You remember what you saw. You remember the truth. That matters. It may not have changed the world, but it changed you. And today, that change saved my life. Jonathan stared at her, this fierce young woman who had survived things he could barely imagine. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. I want you to stop dying. I want you to live long enough to tell your story. And I need... She hesitated. I need to know that not all of them are monsters. I need proof that there are white people who can see us as human. If I lose that, I lose the ability to fight without becoming what I hate. She stayed. Jonathan didn't want her to stay. He told her to leave, cursed at her, even threatened her. But Tashina, she refused to answer to Sarah anymore, simply ignored him. She cleaned his shack. She cooked food from whatever she could find. She sat with him through the worst of his withdrawal when the demons came and he screamed at ghosts only he could see. Why are you doing this? He gasped one night, his body racked with tremors. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I can't help you. You already helped me, she said, placing a cool cloth on his forehead. Now I help you. That's how my people survive. We help each other. We don't throw away broken things, we mend them. Weeks passed. Months. Slowly, painfully, Jonathan came back to life. He stopped reaching for the bottle first thing in the morning. Then he stopped reaching for it at all. He bathed, shaved, mended his clothes. He started reading again, really reading, not just staring at pages through a haze of alcohol. And he listened. Tashina told him everything. Her grandfather's death, the mass graves of Buffalo, the horrors of Carlisle, the beatings, the disappearances, the cultural destruction so systematic it could only be called genocide. She told him about the other children who had died, the ones who simply gave up and stopped eating, the ones who tried to run and were brought back broken. She told him about the 7 days in the dark cellar, about the hallucinations that kept her company, about the vow she had made over her grandfather's grave. And she told him about Frybread. One afternoon, she found flour, lard, sugar, and salt in his supplies, the same ration ingredients her people had been forced to depend on. Without thinking, her hands began to work, mixing, kneading, shaping. Jonathan watched her form the dough into flat circles and drop them into sizzling fat. What are you making? Frybread. Her voice was distant, her eyes unfocused. My grandmother taught me. When the buffalo were gone and we had nothing left, this is what kept us alive. She pulled a golden disc from the oil, placed it on a tin plate. Do you know why I hated this food for years? She asked. Because every bite tasted like defeat, like surrender, like everything we had lost. And now... She was quiet for a moment, staring at the simple bread in her hands. Now I think, my grandmother took what they gave us to die on, and she turned it into something that kept us alive. They meant for it to break us. Instead, it became a symbol of our survival. She pushed the plate toward him. Eat. This is the taste of my people refusing to disappear. Jonathan took a bite. Simple, heavy filling. It's good, he said. It's not good. A small smile crossed her face, the first real smile he had seen from her. But it's real. Sometimes real is better than good. 3 years passed. The ramshackle cabin became a working homestead. Tashina's knowledge of herbs and healing skills her grandfather had passed down made her valuable to the surrounding community. Ranchers who would have spat on her in town came quietly to the cabin door when their horses were sick or their children had fevers. She healed them all. White Indian, it didn't matter. Suffering was suffering. Jonathan began writing again. Not reports to Congress. He had learned that lesson, but articles for newspapers, letters to sympathetic journalists, careful documentation of everything Tashina told him about Carlisle and the reservations. They worked as partners, equals. He gave her the legal and political knowledge she needed to understand her enemies. She gave him the purpose he had lost, the reminder that small actions could matter. One evening, sitting by the fire, she asked him, "Do you ever regret it? Everything you lost?" Jonathan stared into the flames. "I regret that my son grew up without a father. I regret that I wasn't strong enough to keep fighting. But do I regret choosing to speak the truth?" He shook his head. "No, the truth was worth more than my comfort. Even though nothing changed. Things changed. Not the big things I couldn't stop. The slaughter couldn't close. The schools couldn't give your people back their land. But small things. A few reporters started asking questions. A few churchmen started having doubts. A few children survived because someone raised the alarm about the rations." He looked at her. "And you're here." That changed. She was quiet for a long moment. "My grandfather said I had to remember everything and tell the world one day, but I didn't know how. Who would listen to an Indian woman? Write it down, write everything. Your grandfather's death, the cellar, all of it. I'll help you find someone to publish it. They'll call me a liar. Some will, others won't. And even if only 10 people believe you, those 10 will tell others. That's how truth spreads, slowly, painfully, but it spreads." Tashina nodded slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand. "You're a good man, Jonathan Whitmore, a broken, foolish, stubborn man, but good." He smiled a genuine smile, something that had been rare for so many years. "And you're the strongest person I've ever met, stronger than any senator, any general, any so-called great man. They tried to destroy everything you were, and you're still standing." "We're both still standing," she said. "That's the point." The letter arrived on a cold morning in early spring. Jonathan read it in silence, his face cycling through emotions, surprise, hope, caution, and something deeper, something like fear. "What is it?" Tashina asked. He handed her the letter. "Anaitor." She read it slowly, her English still careful despite years of practice. "They want you back," she said. "The populist movement. They need leaders. They need someone who isn't afraid to challenge the railroad barons and the banks, someone with political experience." He laughed without humor, someone who already destroyed his reputation so thoroughly he has nothing left to lose. "You're going to go." It wasn't a question. Jonathan walked to the window, looking out at the vast prairie stretching to the horizon. "If I go back, I might be able to do real good this time. The populists are actually winning elections. They're talking about breaking up the monopolies, protecting small farmers, giving ordinary people a voice. And they're not afraid to include Indians in their coalition. At least some of them aren't. It's your chance to return," she said quietly. "To be Senator Whitmore again. To matter." He turned to face her. "Come with me." Silence. "Tashina, I mean it. Come with me. You're brilliant. You speak better than half the lawyers I knew in Washington. You could testify, write, organize. We could fight together." She stood very still, her face unreadable. "And what would I be in that world? My advisor, my colleague. Your what, Jonathan?" Her voice hardened. "Think carefully before you answer. What would I be to them, to the newspapers, the politicians, the fine ladies of Washington society?" He didn't answer. He knew she was right. "I would be your Indian woman," she said, each word precise and cold. "Your exotic companion, your pet savage that you brought back from the frontier." They would whisper behind their hands, "There goes Whitmore with his squaw. How progressive, how scandalous. I don't care what they think. But I do." Her voice rose the first time he had ever heard her shout. "I spent 6 years being Sarah. 6 years being told my real name was devil speech. My real language was gibberish. My real self was something shameful to be erased. I will not spend another day pretending to be less than I am so that white people can feel comfortable." She stepped toward him, her tall frame rigid with pride. "I am Tashina Wing. I am the granddaughter of Wichasha Wakang, the holy man of the Hunkpapa Lakota. I carry the memory of my people in my bones. I will not shuffle behind you with my eyes down. I will not smile politely when they call me girl or dear or that Indian. I will not be your proof that Indians can be civilized." "That's not what I know." Her voice softened. "I know you don't see me that way, but they will. And eventually I would have to choose destroy your career by being proudly myself, or destroy myself by pretending to be something small and safe. She walked to the window, standing where he had stood, looking out at the same horizon. My place is here, with this land, with what remains of my people. I will write what my grandfather told me to write. I will remember what he told me to remember. And one day, when enough time has passed, someone will read my words and know what was done to us. Jonathan's voice was rough when he spoke. And what about us? What about us? These 3 years, they meant something. To me, at least. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears, the first tears he had ever seen from her. They meant everything to me, too. You proved that not all white people are the same. You gave me back something I had almost lost the ability to trust. But, she took a deep breath, you have your path. I have mine. They cross here in this place in this moment, but they don't lead to the same destination. The day he left the sky was heavy with clouds. Jonathan had packed light, a single bag, a few books, the letter. He had signed over the homestead to Tashina, along with enough money to live comfortably for years. He had also arranged for 2 people to stay and help her, Samuel and Mary, a freedman couple who had worked for him years ago and had no love for the system that had enslaved them. They're good people, he told Tashina as he saddled his horse. Samuel can handle the heavy work. Mary knows medicine almost as well as you do, and they understand what it's like to be treated as less than human. You didn't have to do all this. I know. I wanted to. He tightened the cinch, not looking at her. I need to know you'll be safe, that you'll be comfortable, that you won't have to— His voice broke. That you won't have to eat rotten government beef ever again. She stepped forward and put her hand on his arm. Jonathan. He finally looked at her. Thank you, she said, for saving my life, for listening to my stories, for believing me when I said our language wasn't devil speech. A small smile. For learning to pronounce my name even if it took you 3 years. And despite everything, he laughed. I'm still not sure I say it right. You don't, but you try. That matters. He mounted the horse, gathered the reins. Then he looked down at her, this tall, proud, beautiful woman who had dragged him back from the edge of oblivion. I'll write, he said. I'll read. And if you ever need anything, I'll survive. That's what we do. She stepped back. Go. Go change the world, or try to. And when you fail— A real smile now, bright and fierce. Come back. I'll still be here. He nodded, unable to speak. Then he turned his horse toward the horizon and rode away. She watched him until he was a speck on the prairie, then nothing at all. Then she walked back to the house, to the table where her papers waited. She picked up the pen, the weapon her grandfather had told her to wield, and began to write. My name is Tashina Wing. In the language they forced upon me, I was called Sarah, but that was never my name. My true name means Robe of the Deer, given to me by my grandfather because I was born under a full moon in the season when deer give birth. My grandfather was Wichasha Wakang, the holy man of our people. He died in 1880 on a reservation in a rotting tipi because he refused to eat the poisoned meat the government sent to kill us slowly. This is the story of how 60 million buffalo were murdered to starve us into submission. This is the story of children stolen from their families and beaten for speaking their mother's tongue. This is the story of a nation erased. And this is the story of how we survived. We are still here. We will always be here, and we will never stop remembering. Years later, an old woman stood on a hill overlooking the Montana prairie. Her hair was gray now, worn in 2 long braids, the way her grandmother had worn hers. Her hands were weathered from decades of work, her face lined with memories both bitter and sweet. Below her, in the golden afternoon light, a small herd of buffalo grazed peacefully. There were perhaps 30 of them, descendants of the few hundred that had survived the great slaughter. Not 60 million, but not 0 either. Tashina watched them for a long time. We're the same, you and I, she murmured. They tried to wipe us from the earth. They almost succeeded, but almost isn't enough. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of grass and sage and something older, something that had been on this land since before memory. She thought about Jonathan. He had died 5 years ago somewhere in Nebraska, still fighting for his causes. They had exchanged letters until the end. He never married again. Neither did she. What they had been to each other didn't have a name in English or in Lakota, something more than friends, different from lovers, bound by shared wounds and shared healing. She thought about her grandfather, his voice still clear in her memory after all these decades. She had kept her promise. She had written everything down. Her accounts had been published, read, debated. Not everyone believed them, but enough did. The truth was out there now, living its own life, spreading slowly through the world. She thought about Frybread. She had eaten it just this morning, as she did every morning. The taste of survival, the taste of stubborn refusal to disappear. "We're still here," she said aloud to the buffalo, to the wind, to the ghosts of everyone she had loved and lost. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, the same color she had seen 60 years ago, standing with her grandmother among the rotting buffalo carcasses. But the smell was different now. Clean grass, living earth, hope. She turned and walked back toward her home, her steps slow but steady. Behind her, the buffalo continued to graze their dark shapes, moving against the golden light, like promises that had finally been kept. In 1900, there were only 237,000 Native Americans left in the United States, down from an estimated 5 to 10 million before European contact. In less than 4 centuries, 95% of a people had vanished. The government had taken their land, killed their food supply, stolen their children, forbidden their languages, and tried to erase their very existence from the face of the earth. They failed. The buffalo that once numbered 60 million, reduced to barely 300 by 1884, did not disappear. Protected by a handful of ranchers and conservationists, some of them like Jonathan Whitmore driven by guilt or conscience, the great herds began their slow return. Today there are over 500,000 buffalo roaming the plains again. Not 60 million, but not extinction either. The thunder of their hooves can still be heard on the prairie, a heartbeat that refused to stop. And the people survive too. Today there are nearly 7 million Native Americans in the United States. The children who were beaten for speaking their mother tongue grew up and whispered those forbidden words to their own children in the dark. The languages that Carlisle and hundreds of schools like it tried to murder are being taught again in universities, in tribal schools, in living rooms where grandmothers sit with grandchildren. Lakota, Navajo, Cherokee, Cheyenne. These voices rise again, defiant and alive. The ceremonies that were outlawed are practiced openly now. The songs that were silenced are sung again. The stories that were supposed to die with the last generation are being written down, recorded, passed on. And everywhere, in every Native community across this land, grandmothers still make Frybread. They make it for powwows and family reunions, for funerals and weddings, for ordinary Tuesday dinners when the grandchildren come to visit. The smell of dough frying in oil fills kitchens on reservations and in cities, in small towns and suburbs, wherever Native people have made their homes. When asked what this simple bread means to them, they say the same thing Thashina said in her cabin all those years ago. This is the taste of survival. They gave us these ingredients to kill us. We turned them into something that kept us alive. And we're still here. We'll always be here. The Carlisle Indian Industrial School closed in 1918. The building still stands in Pennsylvania, a monument to a failed attempt at cultural genocide. But the children who walked out of those gates, the ones who survived, they carried something the school could never touch. They carried memory. They carried identity. They carried the stubborn, unbreakable will to exist. Thashina Wing died in 1923 at the age of 55. She never left Montana. She never married. But she filled dozens of notebooks with her memories, her grandfather's teachings, her account of what was done to her people. Those notebooks were passed down through generations, eventually finding their way to historians and scholars who recognized them for what they were. The voice of a survivor speaking across time. Her final entry, written just days before her death, read simply, "I have kept my promise, grandfather. I remembered. I wrote it all down. Now others will remember too. The chain is unbroken. We go on." Sometimes survival is the greatest victory of all, and sometimes a single woman with a pen can defeat an empire.